Our chicken waterer broke. Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. This is Kevin. Well, I came out this morning and our automatic chicken waterer that I've been using for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years was broken. The bucket on it had finally deteriorated, I guess just from being out in the sun and everything else. So today I need to build a new one, and I thought I'd show you how to build the style of automatic waterer that we use. Now again, we've been using the same style for about 5 or 6 years now, and I absolutely love them. They keep the sun off of the water, so you don't get a lot of algae growth. They're very clean because the chickens only have a very small area to drink through, so they don't get a lot of dirt and everything else inside of. And you can be used either connected to a garden hose, or the way that I use it is I actually have a garbage can that I've installed a faucet on, and it works off a gravity fed system because we don't have running water back by our chicken coop. So it's a very easy thing to build with just a few simple parts that you can pick up either locally at your home improvement store, or I've actually put links to them on our Amazon shop if you can't find them locally. It depends kind of in what part of the country you're in, whether or not you're going to be able to find them, I think. The main components that you need, first of all, a 5-gallon bucket, which you should be able to get anywhere. And then a float valve for inside of the bucket. Now this type of float valve is actually used in evaporative coolers, or sometimes they're called swamp coolers, which are actually pretty popular where we used to live in Arizona, where the humidity is really low. It's actually just a type of, it's like another form of air conditioning. But in real humid areas like we live now in Missouri, nobody really uses swamp coolers because they don't want more humidity in the air. So these are harder to find, but I still had a bunch of them. In fact, I'm just reusing the one out of our old one today because the float valve was still fine, just the bucket had broken. So again, you need one of these float valves. You need an adapter to be able to connect it to a garden hose or faucet. And you need some of this 1/4-inch poly tubing, which again you can find in like the irrigation section at Home Depot or Lowe's, or you know, any of the home improvement stores. This is 1/4-inch tubing, and that actually is what fits on this float valve as well. So that's really all you need, and then a drill and some drill bits, and it's a real easy thing to build. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is drill a hole so that the float valve can go inside of the bucket. I'm going to drill that hole 9 inches from the bottom of the bucket, and I like to drill it right where the handle goes on the bucket. That way later on when we drill the rest of the holes, this handle will just be kind of out of the way. So that'll make sense to you as we go further on. So I'm going to mark a spot here 9 inches from the bottom of the bucket. And that's where we're going to drill our hole for the float valve to go in. Now you want to use a drill bit that is just slightly bigger than the float valve here. So you want to get a drill bit that's just slightly bigger than this right here, so that can go through the bucket. Alright, so now that we have our hole drilled, all we need to do is put the float valve through. And then there's a little paper washer that came with the float valve. We'll go ahead and put that on. And then there's a little flat nut that comes with that. We'll put that on. And that's what holds the valve in place. You don't really have to worry about this whole being watertight, because the water's never really going to get to the level of where this hole is anyway. So you just want to secure that with your fingers like that. So now we have our float valve inside of our bucket. Now, with that float valve is a little compression fitting, a little nut, and a little compression ring. Don't lose those while we do the rest of the steps. Put them somewhere safe, like in your pocket or somewhere, so that they don't just disappear while we're doing the rest of this. Alright, now it's time to drill the holes for where the chickens will actually drink out of. And what we're going to need for that is, again, our drill and a 2.5 inch hole saw. Alright, and now what we're going to do is we're going to make 4 holes in this bucket for the chickens to drink out of. Where the only place you don't really want a hole is right straight across from the float valve, because as you can see, the float valve pretty much goes all the way across the bucket, so you don't want a hole right there in the front of the bucket. So I'm going to put 2 holes on each side, and that is where the chickens will drink out of. Now I'm going to put these holes, the center of these holes, at 9 inches, just like the float valve. So the hole will be, you know, 1.25 inches below and 1.25 inches above that to make our 2.5 inches. So again, you're going to set the center of the hole at 2.5 inches, or at 9 inches from the bucket, and it's going to be a 2.5 inch hole. And it really doesn't matter on the placement of these. Just put them where you want them. Again, just so that there isn't one right at the front of the bucket. Alright, so now I've got all 4 holes drilled in my bucket, and this is where the chickens will actually put their heads to drink the water. So now it's time to go ahead and connect our water line to the bucket. You do want to try to get the excess plastic off of here, just so the chickens don't drink it. But we'll rinse the bucket out well before we put it over by the chickens anyway. So, alright, so what you need is a piece of your poly tubing. This usually comes in like a 50-foot roll. I usually put about, I don't know, 5 or 7 feet or so on each one, just so I have plenty of room to be able to move it around. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is attach our tubing to the actual float valve. Remember those pieces that you put in your pocket earlier? We need those now. So what you're going to do is put your compression ring onto the tubing, and you want to put the skinnier side toward the end of the tubing. Now some float valves come with a plastic compression fitting and some come with a metal fitting. I've used both. They both seem to work just fine. So you want to put that on just like that. And really, we should have put this nut on first. That was my mistake. Luckily, we still have an empty end way down here, so we can just slide it on from down here. So that it's just like that. So now this will just go into our bucket here. And you want to tighten that nut. And you don't want to tighten it too much, but I will use a wrench just to tighten it so that it's snug so that it doesn't leak. Alright, so now it's time to put on our hose bib adapter. And there's different styles of these as well. Just look in your irrigation section at your local store. And I like the metal ones. They just seem to last longer, but they do sell plastic ones that are cheaper. So just get you know, whichever one works best for you and your budget. So this is going to be basically the same thing. First we're going to put on the nut, slide that down. And then this actually has a metal compression fitting, so we're just going to slide that on. And slide it down about that far. And then we'll just go ahead and put that on like that. And I'll grab some wrenches and tighten that up. Again, snug, but not so tight that it cuts through the rubber tube. Alright, and that is really all there is to it. I'm going to go ahead and go grab the garden hose so we can test it out first and see if we need to make any adjustments, and then if all is good, we'll take it over and give it to the chickens, and they'll have a new watering system. So let me go grab the hose and we'll test it out. Alright, so I've got our garden hose. I'm going to go ahead and hook it up to the bucket and we'll test it out. Now, one thing I should mention, again, I use ours with a gravity fed system, which is very low pressure. If you're using it with a garden hose, what I would suggest is that you just get, you know, an adapter like this that you can adjust, and just, you know, you don't need it on very much. And that way, if there ever is, you know, an issue, something breaks or something like that, you're not wasting a ton of water, you know, it's just trickling out. So, but for now, we're going to test it on all the way, because I want to make sure everything is, you know, capable of, you know, it doesn't have any leaks or anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this on, and we'll watch the bucket fill, and hopefully, ideally, the water will get to just below these holes, and then it'll stop flowing. That's where you want it to be, is just below those holes, so the chickens can see the water. So we'll see what happens. If it's not right, I'll show you how to adjust the float to make it where it's supposed to be. Now you can hear that it's starting to slow down, and it's still pretty far from the bottom of those holes, so that tells me we're probably going to need to adjust the float valve. So what I'm going to do right now is just push this down and let it fill a little faster till it gets closer to the bottom of the holes. You can see there it's almost stopped, and we still have quite a ways to go. And there it stopped, and now we still aren't as full as we need to be. So now these float valves are really easy to adjust. All you have to do is bend it. In this case, since the water level needs to come up, all we'll do is bend the front of the float valve up a little bit, and that will make the water start again, and we'll see where the new ending point is. Now you can see that we're almost to the bottom of the holes, and it's starting to slow down quite a bit, so I think we're going to be pretty good right where we're at. Might need to adjust just a tiny bit more to get it just a little bit closer to the bottom of the holes. The nice thing is, once you have this adjusted, it pretty much stays forever, and you don't really need to worry about doing it again. There we go. I think that's about perfect. Let me show you what it looks like from the chicken's perspective. Alright, so if you were the chicken, you can see that right here, you can see the water level through the holes in the bucket. And that's where they'll stick their head right through the holes to drink. This is also why I said I like to put the, so that the tube comes out, you know, where the handle hits on the bucket. That way you can put that back there, and it will be out of the way of the holes where the chickens need to drink. Alright, so the last thing that we need to do is just go ahead and put a lid on. And this helps keeps the sun off of the water directly, which greatly reduces algae buildup from the sun not hitting the water. You'll still get a little bit of algae buildup over time, but honestly, I clean these out like at the beginning and end of each season, and that's about it. So let's go ahead and take it over by the chickens and hook it up to the gravity fed system, and we'll see how they like it. All right, so I've got it all hooked up over here in the chicken area. I did raise the water up off the ground with these pieces of wood, and that just makes the water more at eye level for the chickens. It just makes it a little easier for them to drink out of. So you can see they're already using it, and they seem to really like it, I guess, as much as a chicken can like anything. But I'm glad I got this fixed. Makes my chores a lot easier. I have it hooked to a 35-gallon garbage can, and that will give me about 10 days worth of water before I need to come out and fill it. So much easier than filling waterers every day. If this is your first time here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button before you leave. We sure would appreciate it. If you're one of our traditionalists who comes back every day, thank you so much. And until next time, you guys, thanks for stopping by the homestead. Take care, and God bless.